All right, we are live. Good evening, folks. Today's session is a continuation of our previous session, which was on para completion. So today is a practice session of para completion. The questions that I've got are all PYQs of the para completion of the CAT exam. So we'll be focusing on those. If you've not attended the previous session, I would recommend to go watch that session before you continue to this one, because the level of questions today are quite hard. So watch that and then begin with this one. The last session was ended with a homework question at the end. So assuming that you have not done this, I will give you another 5 minutes. Let's discuss the solution for this after 5 minutes. So if you haven't attempted it, kindly attempt. Lock in the answer, put in your answer in the chat, and then let's see what the answer should be. Focus on the blank. Given this is the concluding blank or the last blank, follow the approach for the concluding sentence. Eliminate option as per the bad options techniques that I have taught in the last class, and then give me your answer. Good evening, Rajneesh. Rajneesh, please consider your answer again. So the trick for para completion, and the most obvious trick, is that it should be connected to the penultimate sentence. So it should follow the string of thought, the structure. Everything needs to be mentioned. Although at first glance all options seem correct, yes, but check which option connects to the penultimate sentence. Okay, it's 9:06, so let's discuss it. Let's do it together. So, step one is first reading the entire paragraph, trying to understand the crux of the paragraph. The paragraph states while your intentional mind is thoughtful, it's easily waylaid by deep seated habits. If you're trying to lose weight, for example, standard interventions like weight loss programs will leave you intentional and mind feeling motivated, but they won't feed your habitual mind. So, to accomplish that, you must first derail. Derail means to remove, sorry, I don't know what. Yes. Derail means to remove the existing habits and create a window of opportunity means to replace. वही होता है ना, to create a window for opportunity means to open a new window, to create a window of opportunity to act on new intentions. So remove old habits and replace them with new habits. Now, B, look at option B. It's the most obvious elimination because B says maintaining a food diary, a record of everything you eat and drink. Nothing is being removed, nothing is being replaced. Okay, things are being added here, which is not what the paragraph needs. Now, look at option C, doing squats and calf raises while brushing your teeth. So, doing something good while doing something good. The penultimate sentence says removing bad habits or existing habits for new habits. C says doing two things parallelly. Again, not related to our penultimate sentence. Now we're left with A and D. Look at D. So, get rid of unhealthy cues by moving junk food out of your pantry and putting fresh food out where it's easy to see. So, by removing them out of our pantry and replacing them with fresh fruits. Removing bad habits and replacing them with good habits. So, the best answer for this should be D because A is not a better answer than D. Because A में क्या कह रहे हैं? So the next time you want to watch your favorite movie or TV show, make yourself watch it on the treadmill instead. So here they're saying have the bad habit that you already have, or here there is no mention of replacing. So whatever, if I mean it's quite subjective if you consider watching a movie or a TV show as bad, but it talks about when you're doing an activity, उसके साथ similar to the C1, do it parallelly. There's no mention of replacing, right? So hence A is bad. D mentions replacing, mentions derailing, and also mentions creating a window of opportunity where it's easy to see and fresh fruits. So the answer for this should be option D. It's fine, no worries if you got this one wrong. Please be careful, try to avoid errors in the next question. If you're still confused, if you still feel conflicted that A is better or other options are better, let me know. We can obviously check your logic behind it because all of these questions we are using logic. So if you feel like A could be a more logical one, always put that reason forward. Let's move to the next question. Now this is an opening blank, so please follow appropriate strategies. I will give you guys 5 minutes for this. Oh, was it from Atomic Habits? I have never read that book. So, oh, that was a cat PYQ. So now it makes sense the advice of constantly reading because see where cat is taking questions from. Okay, one last minute. If you have two options also, you can put in that. So the answer could, if you think it's between one of the two, you can even mention those. But please try to eliminate minimum two options. Minimum. All right, let's discuss. It's 9:15. So we have to find the opening blank. Let's read the following lines. The following line starts with for instance, yani for example. So this is an evidence. I need theory for this. Okay, what example is I giving for? What sentence is this example related to? So let's read the example carefully. For example, 19th century Japan was a world where steam and sail, railroads and rickshaws all shared common space. So जापान में रिक्शा भी चल रही थी, ट्रेन्स भी चल रही थी. Industrial revolutions were distributed unequally in place and time. In Second World War, the most common transport for German army was not tanks and other motorized vehicles but horses. The technological world wasn't flat. So now ये पूरा एग्जाम्पल है, ये सारे के सारे एग्जाम्पल हैं. ठीक है, क्यों दिए हैं? या तो इसका रेफरेंस फर्स्ट में होना चाहिए या लास्ट में भी होना चाहिए. फर्स्ट हमें ढूंढना है, तो लेट्स लुक एट द हिंट गिवन इन द लास्ट फ्यू लाइंस. It's right here. So let's focus on this. This is your focus. This is your main idea. The technological world wasn't flat. Why? It was actually lumpy and bumpy. How was it lumpy and bumpy? It was lumpy and bumpy with old and new technologies accumulating on top of and beside each other. यानी technologies नई और पुरानी साथ में coexist कर रही थी. Old and new tech coexist. Now, some common or some obvious option that could be eliminated is, look at this one. Some innovations spread slowly while others do so quickly. Passage mentions none of that. Passage only mentions कि टेक की दुनिया फ्लैट नहीं है. टेक की दुनिया ऊपर नीचे है. क्यों? हम लोग लेटेस्ट टेक भी यूज करते हैं, उसके साथ साथ पुराना टेक भी यूज करते हैं. सो दोनों चीजें को एग्जिस्ट करती हैं. सो 4 not discussed. Even see third one, popularity, not discussed. जर्मनी में जर्मन वॉर के टाइम, सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर के टाइम घोड़े पॉपुलर थे और टैंक्स पॉपुलर नहीं थी, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. So popularity also not mentioned. Now 1 and 2 could be maybe confusing. So let us look. One says throughout history, imperatives besides efficiency have driven technological change. So the sentence once usually is supposed to be an intro. So if that is hypothetically our intro, the following lines should explain us this. So besides efficiency, tech क्यों adopt किया जा रहा था? Are the following lines explaining you that? Are the following lines giving you other factors why the change was happening? Okay, there could be any reason. Maybe there's a low cost or convenience or I mean whatever. But is any of this mentioned? I don't see it, right? Only thing that's mentioned is लंपी और बम्पी है टेक की दुनिया. लंपी बम्पी क्यों है? क्योंकि नए और पुराने टेक दोनों एग्जिस्ट करता है. Look at the second one. As they layer and stack, technologies persist over time. What layers and stack? Technology. As the technology layers and stack, it persists over time. So This one talks about how even the old persist ka matlab, I hope you know, exists, okay, remains for a long time. That explains कि क्यों जर्मनी में सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर के टाइम हाईएस्ट पीक व्हेन द नीड इज ऑफ टैंक्स क्यों घोड़े यूज किए जा रहे थे. ठीक है, क्यों जापान में रेल रोड्स भी चल रही थी पर रिक्शा भी चल रही थी, क्योंकि ये लेयर और स्टैक हो रही हैं. नई टेक्नोलॉजी तो आ ही रही है बट साथ में पुरानी भी है. So second one points out to this coexistence, but in a very generalized sense. I mean, it doesn't give you away too much, but rightfully introduces a paragraph. Okay, I saw a couple of doubts in the chat. Let me address them quickly. Rajneesh, 1 and 4, neither of them were right. So kindly again review them carefully. Now ask yourself, ठीक है, मैंने हर एक ऑप्शन का रीजन दिया. Now ask yourself, what went wrong? Why is my logic or explanation not aligning with hers? Okay, what did I assume wrong? What did I infer wrong? Okay, did I read the sentence wrong? Did I overthink? Did I underthink? वो भी ऐसा होता है. Okay, Abhay is asking, आपकी previous year वाली playlist follow कर रही थी लेकिन वो YT पे available नहीं किया. Um, there is no previous year playlist for this one, but I mean, I don't think there is. I mean, I am relatively new, so I have not taught previous year. But if you do find videos, I think you can watch it. Otherwise, follow this series because in this series, I will be covering all CAT plus the other management exam topics. So I think the current playlist that we are going to be making from this series is going to be enough. But I am highly doubtful that you will find a previous year thorough playlist. So yeah, if it's not available, then there isn't one. Okay, this was opening blank. Okay, we did one question on closing blank. Now let's do a couple of questions in middle blank. Okay, this is a middle blank. Somebody mentioned that the first one was taken from Atomic Habits. This is also taken from a book called The Selfish Gene, written by Richard Dawkins. So let's see if you can approach this question. I'll give you 5 minutes. All right, it's 9:27. Let's discuss. Now, this is a bit challenging one, so obviously you can make up your mind if this is a topic for you or not, because this is sort of based loosely based on science. So you can definitely see if science passages and science questions are meant for you or not. Although here there is no knowledge of science or biology required. By mere sentence structure knowledge, you can solve this one. Okay, I have some answers, so let's see if the answer that you've gone for is correct or not. In his book, The Selfish Gene, Dawkins put forth the radical theory that all living creatures are essentially vehicles for their genes and exist merely to transmit and propagate their genes. So, living creatures are vehicles for one's genes and exist merely to transmit and propagate their genes. Hence, the title of the book, Selfish Gene. Then there's a blank, and then, in fact, Dawkins later wrote that his choice of the word selfish was wrong. In fact, in fact loosely translates in Hindi to is, I'm sorry for my matras, but I think this is how you write liye. Yeah, it loosely translates to isliye. Dawkins later wrote that his choice of this word selfish was wrong, since it attributed an anthropomorphic quality. Now, if you've done your word power made easy, you should know this word. Anthropomorphic comes from the root word anthro, which means human, and morphic is to change. So, anthropomorphic is human like. Since it is attributed an anthropomorphic quality to what is essentially a bunch of chemicals, so a better term he thought would have been the immortal gene. Okay, so from these two sentences, we feel like something happened here due to which the title was changed. So let us look for a sentence that justifies this change of title. Now, an obvious elimination would be option 4. Okay, it says genes may be willing to abandon the individual to replicate themselves. Okay, this proves the point of the selfishness of genes, right? How genes are selfish. Then why did he change the title? Even C is very similar to 4. Again, proves the point of selfishness of genes. Similar to 1. Only when individuals behave in their genetic self interest and form alliance, genes are passed on for species to survive. Again, people are only making alliances on the basis of genetic supremacy. So, again, selfishness of genes. Why did he change his title? See, in fact लिखा है. अगर in fact नहीं लिखा होता, then this would be a fresh sentence and this would have been a justification. But in fact states that here lies the reason of his title change. And good job, the answer for this is indeed 2, because it 2 explains the change, the realization that my title for the book is actually wrong. Why is it wrong? Because genes are not sentient. सेंटिएंट, अगर ये वोकैबलरी वर्ड नहीं पता होता तो थोड़ा दिक्कत होता. सेंटिएंट यानी इमोशनल. Okay, emotional. Genes are not emotional. They pass through bodies and affect them, but are not affected by them on the way through. So they pass through bodies and affect the bodies, but they are not affected by our bodies. Hence, they are not selfish, but they are immortal because they can pass through our body and continue to live in other people's body, in our children's body forever. Hence, immortal and not selfish. So, the answer for this is 2. Good job. Let us do one last question before we bid farewell. Okay, again, this is a good level question and it's a middle blank. I think I would like to give you a little more time for this question than compared to other questions. So I think I'll give you guys like 8 minutes. So properly eliminate and lock in and analyze your answers. Because I don't think even in the exam 5 minute में ये हो सकता है. The camera fell. I hope it's back and working. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. All right, guys, last 2 minutes and then let's discuss the question. Okay, it's 9:40. Let's discuss the question. Now, I said that this could be potentially a challenging question because of the understanding of the paragraph could be a little complex to understand the chain of events, right? Why certain sentences given. So let's try to dissect. Economic models are stylized abstractions of reality. Designing them is an art and a science. Stylized abstractions, yani they imitate reality. They are imitations of reality. I once had a professor who compared economic models to maps. Okay, so obviously the following lines would explain the comparison of the two. The line after the blank says the same is true for economic models. So this sentence is obviously about maps because the economic model explanation is done in the following lines. The same is true for economic models. Now, what is this? What is true for economic models? This is true. You choose what's important to include. Why? To understand how certain factors relate to each other. So, what is answered here? Why is answered here? Then comes the following lines. Even then, the math gets very complicated. फिर भी math बहुत मुश्किल हो जाती है. So obviously, even this sentence should be related to the blank. So now let's approach the question, let's approach the options and see which is the most appropriate option. Let's look at statement 3 or option 3 because nobody went for that. If they cannot be understood and interpreted by the layman, they serve no purpose. Now, interpretation of the maps by the layman is not given because if that was given, that is the same, that is true for economic model. You choose what's important to include has nothing to do with this. If you're simplifying something, you're not choosing and eliminating certain elements, you're simplifying them, right? So simplification is not mentioned, choosing is mentioned. Choosing is mentioned. 3 focuses on simplification. Now, look at option 2. Designing a map with the wrong audience in mind can render your map almost completely useless. Now, It's again talking about perception. Okay, who are you keeping in your mind to design the map? But in the following lines, there is no justification for two. In the sense, why is this given? What justifies the right audience? Why not a wrong audience? Okay, if this is a completely useless thing, the same goes for economic model. Okay, so following lines should include, okay, what, how should one design a map with the right audience in the mind? The following lines do not explain that, right? So even two is irrelevant to the given paragraph. Now we're left with 1 and 4. Compelling options. So let's read them. 1 says the power of maps come at a cost. When you distill information, you introduce uncertainty. Distill means to filter. So this is somehow related to choosing. So it is related to the paragraph. But then there's this one phrase. You choose uncertainty. Right? There's an extra information. The same is true for economic models. You choose what's important to include. So you distill the information in order to understand how certain factors relate to each other. ठीक है. Even then, the maths get very complicated. Uncertainty is never explained in the following lines. So this is sort of a new element that if you have gone for this option, you have introduced, which is not justified or connected with the following sentences. But if you look at the fourth statement or the fourth option, if you include every tree, every and back road, the map is intractable. Okay, means incomprehensible. खिचड़ी जिसे कहते हैं, ठीक है, यानी समझ ही नहीं आएगा क्या चल रहा है. कब? If you include every tree and back road. The same is true for economic models. If you include every single element, it becomes intractable. So choose what's important to include and understand how certain factors work. Now, why is it saying to choose what's important to include? क्योंकि even minimum elements भी math को बहुत complicated कर देते हैं. इसलिए imagine, और अगर हर एक ट्री और हर एक रोड तुम्हारे गूगल मैप्स पे दिखता तो तुम कहीं पहुंच ही नहीं पाते. हर एक गली, हर एक दुकान, हर एक घर, if it was on your Google Maps, to understand a map would have been very difficult for you. That's the same exact point that has been made here. इसलिए kindly only include the points, the elements that are relevant. 1 and 4, although are very close, one introduces something called uncertainty, which is not explained in the following lines. So we have to eliminate this. And 4 is a better option than 1 because it directly connects to all the following sentences without introducing anything new. Okay, so the answer for this was option 4. All right. This was it from my end. I mean, these were all the questions that I had from the previous year. I mean, if you want to practice a couple of more questions, there are endless resources which you can refer to. The questions that we had done were all PYQs today and all different blanks. So this was also a good revision for you in the terms of the strategies to be followed for each sort of question. All right. Then we had 2 sessions this week, so there are no sessions next week. So we will continue the week after that, and I will be doing para jumbles. So please don't miss those sessions. Until that time, kindly keep practicing all the concepts that we've done so far. All right, I think I will end my session here. If you have any doubts so far, kindly comment down. I will try to address them there as soon as possible. All right, thank you so much. Have a good evening.